Welcome back, everyone. So today, we're diving into this incredibly fascinating explainer on the third chapter of the Book of Esther. And wow, we're talking about extreme historical tension here, serious political maneuvering, and a situation that just looks completely, entirely beyond saving. You know those moments, right? Where every piece of data, every legal decree, literally every ounce of logic tells you that the game is just completely over. But, as we're going to see from this historical analysis, sometimes the appearance of a total defeat is really just an illusion. I mean, imagine looking at a calendar, and right there, circled in bright red ink, is the exact day of your complete destruction. When the date is officially set, and an entire empire's highest decree is legally sealed against you, is there genuinely any room for hope? Like, how do we even react when literally all the odds, the official paperwork, and the highest authorities in the land are just completely stacked against you? Keep that question in mind as we unravel all this.
Okay, part one, the deadly plot.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand this crisis, we've got to look at the main architect behind it, Haman the Agagite. See, Haman had this absolutely murderous grudge against a Jewish man named Mordecai. And he decided, you know what, I'm going to leverage my political power to wipe out Mordecai's entire people from the face of the Persian Empire. And his method for doing this was incredibly specific. He used this practice called Purim. Basically, it's this superstitious pagan method of casting lots, kind of like rolling ancient dice. So he wasn't just, picking a random Tuesday out of a hat. He was actually looking for cosmic approval for genocide. He was seeking the absolute perfect, spiritually favorable day for this extermination plan to succeed.
Let's break down this timeline, because it is honestly terrifying. In the first month, Nisan, of King Ahasuerus' 12th year, Haman cast these lots, and the quote-unquote lucky date that the dice give him, it falls all the way in the 12th month, Adar, specifically the 13th day, which creates this agonizing 11-month ticking clock for the Jews. Just imagine that. For almost an entire year, they would have to wake up every single day knowing the exact scheduled date for their total annihilation. Moving right along to Section 2, bribing the king. So the crucial point is, Haman now needed the official green light from King Ahasuerus. And Ahasuerus was, well, a pretty fickle and impulsive ruler. But Haman knew exactly how to play him. He used this incredibly toxic mix of political fear-mongering and just overwhelming financial temptation. Of course, he doesn't admit to a personal vendetta, right? Instead, he falsely smears the Jewish people. He basically goes to the king and claims, hey, there's this scattered group, their laws are completely different, and they actively disobey your laws. He's framing them as this severe threat to state security. He completely masks his own bruised ego behind this fake, manufactured concern for the empire's stability.
But Haman doesn't just stop at political manipulation. Oh no, he brings out the heavy artillery. He offers the king an absolutely staggering financial incentive to seal the deal. We're talking 6.8 million silver coins. He literally promises to deposit this incredibly massive sum directly into the royal treasury if the king simply allows him to handle this troublesome population. And this brilliantly illustrates just how insanely massive this bribe really was. To put that into perspective for a second, modern estimations actually suggest that 6.8 million silver coins was equivalent to roughly 2/3 of the entire Persian Empire's annual tax revenue. So Haman is essentially offering to fund the empire for the better part of a year, totally out of his own pocket. And honestly, faced with that kind of mind-boggling wealth, the king's moral compass, if he even ever had one, just completely vanishes.
Which brings us to Section 3, the irreversible decree. Let's move to and see how this builds into just an absolutely inescapable trap. So, on the 13th day of that first month, the royal scribes are summoned. Step 1, the decree is meticulously translated and written down into every local language across this vast empire. Step 2, it's officially stamped and sealed with the royal signet ring. And then step 3, it gets handed off to these swift couriers to be delivered to every single province. It's really just this terrifyingly efficient machine of death.
Because he was so blinded by that massive bribe, the king had just casually handed over his signet ring. Now, that ring is the ultimate symbol of supreme executive power, and he just hands it over without a single investigation. And here, right here, is the detail that makes this whole thing seem completely hopeless. Under ancient Persian law, any edict sealed with that ring is utterly irreversible. Like, not even the king himself could legally revoke a decree once it had been stamped. So the death sentence for the Jewish men, women, and children, it was now absolute, totally binding law across the known world.
Next up, Section 4, panic in the city. As those couriers rode out, the decree hit the streets of the capital Susa, and it creates this chilling contrast. Think about this. On one hand, literally right after issuing an unalterable warrant for genocide, the king and Haman just casually sit down to drink wine, like perfectly at ease. But on the other hand, the entire city outside is thrown into absolute panic and confusion. The sheer terror of knowing that a massacre is legally sanctioned and totally unstoppable, it just completely shatters the peace of the capital.
You know, this mass panic is so reminiscent of that well-known biblical story where Jesus' disciples get caught in a violent, raging storm at sea. Just as those disciples felt entirely helpless as those giant waves threatened to capsize and sink their boat, the Jewish people in Susa felt completely overwhelmed by this massive political and legal tidal wave. It just begs the looming question, will God step in to calm the raging storm in Persia, the exact same way Jesus calmed the waves on the water?
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it poses a fascinating challenge to our perception of reality. Haman has the date. He has the king's authority. The decree is legally unchangeable. The red tape is tied, the stamp is pressed, the wine is poured. By literally every human metric, by every single data point available, the Jews are finished. But we really have to ask ourselves, is it truly a done deal? Is this trap actually inescapable?
Which leads us to Section 5, the ultimate reversal. You see, sometimes an utterly insurmountable deficit is really just the dramatic setup for a miraculous comeback. To drive this home, imagine the 2026 NBA Finals. The San Antonio Spurs are comfortably leading the New York Knicks by a massive 29 points. Every single fan, every player in the court, every statistical model out there says the game is a sure thing, right? It's completely over. Yet, miraculously, the Knicks mount the greatest comeback in history, winning the game 107-106. It just goes to show that even the most mathematically guaranteed outcomes can be overturned in the absolute blink of an eye.
And connecting that stunning modern upset back to the ancient streets of Persia, we find Proverbs 16:33. The lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. Sure, Haman may have shaken the dice. He might have totally thought that the pagan gods or his own cleverness secured him the perfect date for his victory. But here's the thing. While man rolls the dice, it is God who completely dictates where they land. Haman really thought he was writing the ending, but actually, he was just setting the stage. Finally, Section 6, trusting the unseen hand.
So how do we actually apply this grand historical narrative today? Well, we all face situations in life that just feel hopelessly dead. Maybe it's a failing marriage where the papers are literally already drawn up, or maybe it's deeply fractured family dynamics, a wayward child, or some medical or financial scenario where all the data, all the charts, and all the experts are telling you the odds are completely zero. It feels exactly like the ring has been stamped and the decree is permanently finalized.
But here's the ultimate reversal. That terrifying decree of death and judgment that was meant to wipe out all of us, it ultimately fell onto the head of one single Jew, Jesus Christ. By taking that irreversible decree upon himself on the cross, he secured an eternal salvation and a deliverance that absolutely no earthly king or political enemy could ever revoke.
Now, while God might not always answer our specific, localized prayers exactly the way we script them in our heads, we are left with this profound reassurance found in Jude 24. It says, "To him who is able to keep you from stumbling and to present you before his glorious presence without fault and with great joy. He alone holds the power to sustain us, to keep us from falling apart in the middle of the storm, and ultimately, to bring us to a joyful, faultless finish line." Which leaves us with one final lingering thought to reflect on today. When the lots have been cast against you, when the stamp of defeat feels totally permanent, and when the panic in your own life is just deafening, are you willing to trust the unseen hand of the God who calms the storm, even when your situation seems totally irreversible? Thank you so much for diving into this incredible explainer with me today, and hey, keep seeking the truth behind the history.